Hello, everyone. Vince Versace here, Director of News Media at ConstructConnect, responsible for the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce. Here today for the recording of our year in review 2025 in construction as it concerns everything we covered through the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce. And joining me today is.
Lindsey Cole, DCN and JOC editor.
So thanks, Lindsay. We're working on our year-end coverage and package of stories about most read, most popular, what we thought was most important. God, we could almost summarize it in one word: tariffs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very safe, the tumultuous year of tariffs.
Yeah,
Yes, I think that's a safe bet to start our year-end discussions on for sure. It was
yeah.
completely, well, it's still dominating the headlines, and it will in 2026 too. But
And that's the thing that we were there looking at everything we started to hear at the beginning of the year through the Trump administration. Like we're picking up on the back end of all the 51st state stuff, annexation stuff. And then when he starts to, roll out his tariff ideas, our industry had to look at it and go, well, how's it going to hit us? How does it impact us? Because the last time under his previous tenure, we dealt with tariffs and stuff around steel. In particular, we had a lot of discussion and coverage around that. But this time, once again, it brought us to the fore because it just seems so much more wide-ranging, right?
yeah, not only wide-ranging, but also completely changing daily the percentage amounts of what the
Mm.
tariffs were going to be, whether they were going to happen this date or that date. Um, you know, Blowing up the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. It was really challenging, and I think for those our readers and those in construction to try to keep pace, it still is to try to keep pace with what's going on. You highlighted that when this happened previously, we obviously covered the steel impacts. Well, that is, I think, tenfold this time with steel and aluminum and lumber taking the brunt for, those materials in the industry that have been hit hardest that we would report about. It was interesting to see how the industry had to pivot and negotiate this new world, and it not surprisingly comes down to what's involved in contracts, what's covered,
Hmm.
what's not, what will have to be modified in the future. And then, coupled with escalating costs and supply chain risks, it was just a lot to navigate. And, having gone through the coverage from, January to now to see the progression and escalation of this issue has been um, just unfathomable, really. So I
Hmm.
have no other word other than that because it was so uncertain, and I think that's probably the term for the year too is uncertain.
Yeah, the uncertainty, it's kind of neat. We get to sit back and look at this body of work throughout the year, right? And we know tariffs is a big deal, whether it's B2B media, commercial media. We were still doing stories even before that around supply chain issues
Right.
and stuff that's still post-COVID that still feels like it's being shaked out. You know what I mean? As far as supply chains and the flow of goods and pricing. But with all that and with all the stories we wrote and news briefs and things we did, part of our year-end projects is a little thing that I do on the side about our most read stories, right, of the year. And as always, that's where that kind of split happens, right?
Yeah.
We know the important stories that we covered. We know that they resonate in the industry. It's hitting the right people at the C level, whichever level, you know what I mean? But not one single tariff story or economic story was in our top 20 of most read for the year. And that always fascinates me about you, our readers. You know what I mean? That we know those stories are important in those circles that we're doing because the people are coming to us.
Oh
We
yeah.
get it. It's for their own personal gain to amplify their messages. But we're doing a lot of proactive reporting on a lot of that stuff, touching upon everything we need to touch upon to have a solid piece of construction intel for our readers in the industry. And we don't, and they read them. People do read them, but nowhere near with the ferocity or interest that I usually see in the top 20. Like this is not even an economic story, which just blows me away, right? It was like 17 project stories, one labor story, you know what I mean, and two health and safety stories. And So I always find that kind of interesting. We do these year-end talks, we talk about our list, and it's like we know what's important, but also sometimes our readers tell us what they found most interesting.
Oh,
Are they one
totally.
and the same though?
Well,
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the
that's
thing,
the thing.
right?
Yeah. I mean, you take a look at, we always know that project stories are going to draw our readership in because you know what? It is the fruits of their labor being shown and showcased in some instances. Or in other
Hmm.
instances, it's the challenges that went into that project, be it delays, be it, other hurdles that might have been faced in those projects. So, in some ways, maybe the word tariff might be in one of those 20 stories, who knows?
Hmm.
But in some ways, I almost find it reassuring year to year to see that those are still where our readers are gravitating to because it's also our strength. So, and where we can
Yeah.
be, where we can showcase our prowess as, the source of the industry. So, I was, I always like that. And frankly, let's be real. The word tariffs is everywhere, and there is such a
Hmm.
thing as being oversaturated. So, you have to be
Yes.
careful.
And I think that's the point. I know we're kind of going away from the year in review, but I think it could be of interest to listeners and the readers. They get oversaturated with a lot of that
Mm.
stuff via commercial media. When we talk about governments, the economy, Donald Trump, all that. We are the resource for project stories and for people to find out how things are getting built, what the hiccups are, how do they avoid them. And we're also the place for the industry to come to us to get that filtered message out, that refined message out. But once it's on the internet, once it's on our websites, is it open to everyone? So I always think that's what drives some of this most dread. I always have to stop and go, these aren't all construction readers, Vince. You know what I mean? That are reading the stuff that's in our top 20. It could be all kinds of people that are reading it, not just our regular readers, people looking. And for example, like I'd be remiss to say, we'll give the podium talk really here. So the top three that could, you know what I mean? And here's a great example. Our third most read story in 2025 was a DCN project story entitled Mighty Canadian Mindbuster
Yes.
Gets a Makeover.
Yes.
All right. So
That is close to my heart. So I can
there you go.
completely
Same here.
understand why that did so well.
Yeah.
That is an iconic ride at a majorly popular theme park. And yeah, it was probably people were like, whoa, wait a minute. What kind of makeover here? Is it too much of a makeover? What happened here? That is a classic. So
Yeah.
that makes me laugh.
My favorite ride. So for folks that aren't from Ontario or the GTA area that are listening to us, Canada's
Hmm.
Wonderland, the big massive theme park we have here north of the city. The Mindbuster it's a wooden roller coaster. It's rickety, it's terrifying, it's
It
great.
hurts your
Even when
back.
it
It
was
doesn't
new,
matter because it's in
it,
a good way.
it's in a very good way. Even when I was a kid and it was new, it felt like it was falling apart when you're on it because it just rocks and so rickety. But I can see the appeal. Like you say, it's almost a generational appeal,
Hmm.
isn't it? It's like, what are you doing to my mind buster? Hey, did you hear there's a makeover of the mind buster? Like I can try to think like the fact that that particular project story, because it's general interest, theme parks, anybody's going to find that. And I'm sure it drove up the views, the unique views on
I
that
would
to make
agree.
it our third ranked story of, you know what I mean? Pretty much of the thousands of pieces of material and news we put out there is pretty interesting to me, right? So, and I know it's near and dear to your heart. So, no surprise. Like our second most read story, this is our bread and butter, the DCN bread and butter, right? Breaking news. If there's one thing we've done through thanks to our past staff, the way we kind of just approach the news. And this was one that this is a kudos to you because I remember when this broke, it was you and your sources that helped make this happen. And no one else had this piece, right? And it was breaking worker injured after incident at Darlington Nuclear Project job site.
Yes, that was a scoop, I guess you could say. Um,
Hmm.
obviously no one likes reporting on those stories. Nobody wants to hear about
Hmm.
anybody getting hurt or worse on the job. But at the end of the day, it does draw eyeballs because um again, we're the industry resource on that kind of coverage, which can often get overlooked in the commercial media if it's not quote unquote tragic enough, as awful as that sounds.
Hmm.
But it is, you know, again, testament to the good sources that we have, as well as just trying to get the news out there as quickly as we can when it comes to those type of things.
we don't like writing about those, and we could spend pods upon
Oh,
pods
yes.
around their thoughts around workplace incidents and safety and some of the things we've tried to do. There, as we know, like what was it, 3, 4 years ago
Mm,
when we were still in print, we made the DCN front page black
that was awful.
be-
But I mean, it was
because it was
creative, but it was
that's
awful.
but it was awful. The spate of deaths that happened over a 2 week period in Ontario just before Christmas was unacceptable, right? So we felt like the little we could add to the conversation to show how starkly crazy this was to blacken our front page, right? And strong, you know what I mean? It's strong news. We don't want to write about it, but at the same time, that shows you, you know what I mean? The immediacy of it. The industry wants to know what happened because, hey, could that happen at our site? Find out. Do we know who's working
Hmm.
there? It's a big family. They're fragmented. They fight amongst each other in the industry, right? But it is a brotherhood and sisterhood of people, you know what I mean, on the tools out there, right? So that was our second most read story of the year. And our top read story of the year, drum roll, is Eglinton East LRT project reaches milestone. Crosstown opening date may be in
Oh,
sight.
Jesus.
Toronto commuters and citizens are laughing hearing about that last thing, that opening date may be in sight.
Right. Right. Insight is relative.
Hmm.
In the far distance, it's still in sight. You might be able to see the spec. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where that project sits. Interesting. That also made our list of mega project milestones. Um, I would say for not the right reasons though. It it It's been about 15 years after construction began, and the project is still, winding its way towards an opening date. There was just news that broke a couple days ago that said it might be, later in 2026 than initially thought, because Premier Ford had said it would be the beginning of January. Now it might be the end of January. So it's still a project that is completely up in the air in terms of an actual official opening date. Um, I will say this. The last stage of the project is supposedly complete, and they did transfer operational control to the Toronto Transit Commission. So
Hmm.
the construction of it is got to be done. It just has to be mostly done. So
Right.
I am not surprised to see that made the tops of the list as well. It's also coupled with another Eglinton project that's notable too. But the Crosstown, I think, is part of the headline that probably grabbed most of the reader's attention for sure.
Yeah. And LRT in general.
Mhm.
We know that story has appeal beyond construction when we see it as our top read for
Of
sure.
course.
People are typing in for the latest that it's coming up there, right?
Yeah.
For me, like I look at anything related to Eglinton construction and transit, and it reminds me how old I am. Having like lived in the area when the first initial tunnel started getting bore out for the first kind of expansion of Eglinton. Then that getting canceled by one government,
Mm.
one government starts it, one government ends it, fills it in. Like that is a long time ago. Started my career like, over 30 years ago at this point now. And like, I mean, I remember writing about that and the fact that it's still issues around Eglinton and whether it's the Crosstown, whether it's the LRT. We just had the Finch LRT open up
Yes. Yep.
this week as we record over the last week. Transit is tough. Waterfront project stories, waterfront visions are tough in Toronto. I wrote about 3 different ones in my early days working for commercial media in the city, in the dailies.
Yeah, I think, we have to give some grace in the sense
Mm,
that these transit projects, the complexity and the scope of them is unknown in a lot of it when you first start undertaking these things. You can plan all you want, but there's certain things that you're just gonna have to have happen. Like, you know, there's gonna be setbacks, and I'm not, whether they're political or they're actually on site, they both happen. So, I think we have to give those who are responsible for constructing them some grace in
mm.
the sense that it's not. There's some things that are simply beyond their control, for sure.
We're talking about year-end stuff, and you do mention it. You pulled together for us a list of some notable mega
I
projects
did, yeah.
that the industry was interested in and the general public for 2025. And I loved how you worded it. I'll read it verbatim. See what projects reached substantial completion and made headlines as engineering marvels, along with some others who made headlines for different
Mm.
reasons altogether.
Well, it's the
Mm,
truth. I won't go through all of them on
mm,
the list, but there's some engineering marvels. There truly are. with
Mm.
Site C and Gordie Howe. Both of those had
Yeah.
their headlines that weren't so positive over the years, whether they were millions over budget or delayed or, setbacks because of COVID. Got to remember there's quite a few things going on and then, the current climate. But I will
Mm.
say that both of those projects, when you span the country, they are remarkable in what
Hmm.
has been built there. So,
Yeah.
to me, we had some great articles on those as the years went by, and they're featured in the piece when you get a chance to take a look at them. But we had a nice retrospective by Grant Cameron on Site C that highlights the good, bad, and the ugly. And then we also had a
Mm.
piece on the Gordie Howe Bridge from one of our writers, Rung Stang, that highlighted how it's anticipated to open in early 2026. And it is a thing of
Right.
beauty. So for me,
Hmm.
I always kind of like to look back at the projects that have come together over the years because not only do you see the photos of their literal progress, but you see,
Hmm.
the pride that the workers take, whether it's that shot of them joining together the two sides for the Gordie Howe Bridge, for example, or
Yeah.
the thousands upon thousands of workers that helped with Site C. So for me, those are really cool. There were obviously some others on the list um,
Hmm.
that I don't want to fully reveal. Some we've already talked about, but you can certainly take a look at them because I think they showcase uh, where some mega projects are and aren't going.
Yeah. And look, projects, we keep on how many times have we, thank God, it's not a drinking game for every time we say the word project so far. Christmas drinking game or end of year one. But along those lines, it's about big projects. It's about nation building
Uh-huh.
projects. When we talk about our new prime minister, Mark Carney and his drive to get Canada building, build, baby, build, I think is what one of the quotes
Hmm.
attributed to him. And, and the launch of the major projects office
That was
is a big
huge.
deal.
Yeah.
It's huge for this industry. Yeah, that story may not rank in the top 20, but we know how important that was because every little piece that we did on it drew a reaction of some kind,
Yeah,
right?
the two, I think they called them tranches, but I'm just going to call them lists. The two lists of the
Yeah.
first projects, first and second lists of the projects that were announced are some are already underway, but it was new developments on those, like the Darlington new nuclear project in Clarington. We know it's well underway, but
Mm.
it's the listing of that, it's the recognition of that, I think is huge. Natural Resources Minister Hodgson, excuse me, said this is the most important reform to how Canada builds major projects in decades. That I think alone, that statement alone is pretty bold, but it's
Hmm.
also very telling to trying to get these things, you know, shovels in the ground and getting these things um, underway, which is huge. And they span, I will say, obviously they're mostly resource projects, but they do span the country, truly nation building projects. Um, I will be eager to see just how many do actually get fully underway in 2026, or at least, there's a lot of approvals and things that still need to happen, but the whole point of the major projects office is to expedite that. So let's see how expeditious it actually is, because
Yeah.
it's one thing to form an office and it's another thing to actually get these things going.
And we know with the MPO, the major project office, it goes back to our first point and the catalyst for the tariffs.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Once again, Donald Trump, right? It forces the hands of our country, you know what I mean, longest standing, ally and friend to have to start looking at how do we diversify our economy? How do we start to get to market in a different way? Because all of a sudden our longest standing trusted partner is kind of off the rails right now. So what do we do? Because it's about protecting a nation. You know what I mean? That is resource rich. All I know, I don't mean to, I know I'm not speaking for you, but I know on the whole, as a staff at DC and GOC, as much as we're all about building, it has to be done right. And when I think about Indigenous rights and the things that come up around that, around some of these projects, it has to be done well and respectfully.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You got to play it smart. This isn't just NIMBY type of not in my backyard. Don't put that condo up. You know what I mean?
No.
Another 5 stories. You know what I mean? Or that fence line is in my way. there's the bigger issues here, so it'll be interesting to see how the prime minister and that office navigate all that.
Absolutely.
Because if any of the noise that comes around these projects that is merited and deserves attention, it's that, and we won't shy away from that either in our coverage around stuff like that, right?
No, not at all. In
You
fact,
know.
we've had some examples of that recently with the recent agreement or between Alberta and Ottawa when it
Mhm.
comes to the potential of a West Coast pipeline and the lack of consultation that both BC Prime Minister David Eby and the Indigenous people out there felt. They were not even in some cases made aware that an agreement was going to be happening. So
Mhm.
best not to get off on the wrong foot. You may
Mhm.
want to recalibrate and sit back a little bit. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily the pipeline. That's going to have a lot of hurdles. But I just mean the major projects that have been listed in the major projects office. Um, again, just be prudent and consult with the appropriate parties so that these projects can get done properly and everyone can feel like they've been um, consulted and included.
Yeah, like and there are some of these projects, yeah, some of the ones in the first tranche, the first list were projects that were on their way, but some of the other stuff we've heard about for a
Hmm.
while, and
Hmm.
and I know I remember first writing about the Ring of Fire my early days here at the DCN, so that's like 19 years ago, and the potential that's in there,
I also
you
remember
know.
that.
Yeah, because those were assignments
Yes.
you and you started, and here we are still, you know what I mean? But there is this kind of shared focus or understanding of the importance of unlocking the Ring of
Yeah.
Fire for not just the Ontario economy, but the Canadian economy, but still trying to do it right. We're back to this, doing it right. After all the work on reconciliation, that has to be done right as well. But both the CAR Prime Minister and our Premier, you know what I mean, both on the same page about how to try to unlock all that is, you know what I mean, encouraging that way. It's good for the industry. I mean, it gives us stories to be pretty blunt about it, like how they go about it or what they do. But some of this stuff does take time, and that's been a while. You
It's
know what
not
I
a
mean?
quick
Still trying
fix
to
to
unlock.
the entire tariff problem here. Like if anybody's looking for
No.
a quick fix, that's not how you do it. It's long term, seeing for the long term and making sure our resources are utilized to the best of their ability. And we do have a lot of resources, so I can see how
Mhm.
adding those projects to the list makes perfect sense. It just has to be executed accordingly, and people can't be impatient because the construction alone of these is massive, let alone what comes
Mhm.
before. So.
Well, as we kind of approach the end here, so I'll throw it out to you. And I know we didn't actually discuss this in our pre-show
Oh, I
talk,
love it
but
when he does this. Anyway, go ahead.
yes, I know you do. Uh, What was the newsmaker of the year then for you, in your opinion? What was the news story of the year? Or does it have to be doesn't have to be a smart answer, meaning but like what
Okay,
did
well,
you find?
perfect.
You know what I mean?
Uh,
Like one that it kind of like was like, oh, it's because we did it. That's why it's the newsmaker year. But what did you just find fascinating in the news that affects us? You know what I mean? Throughout the year, to the DCN and JOC.
oh,
Is it back as simple as that? You know what I mean? Everything that came out of that president's mouth, how it impacted all of us up here.
well, yeah, I
Or,
think we'd be
you
remiss
know,
if we didn't say that. I mean, every day was just
mm,
kind of lifting your jaw off the floor to some extent.
mm,
So yeah, I do think that those, not one particular story, but the whole year's worth of chaos was certainly something that we talked about at the dinner table, I suppose, at night with
mm,
the hubby. But
mm,
you know what? I really also think something that came to the forefront in 2025 was technology and construction. I'd say the advent, not even the advent isn't the right word, but the escalation of AI in construction, as well as in general, um, is something that I felt was scary in some ways to see, but also fascinating in other ways. And it continues to be that way. And, we saw at the building show when we went the many examples of AI in construction, or, you know, we're also seeing how AI is being coupled with data centers, however you want to say it, how they kind of go hand in hand. So that's an interesting tidbit for construction. So for me, it's again another element that this industry, which is facing, you got on the one hand all these tariffs and uncertainty with that. Now you're throwing in a new, relatively newish for construction, um, type of tool, if you will, that I think when used properly could be amazing. But it's just interesting to see again how the industry has to pivot continuously. It's constantly pivoting, and if you're slow,
Mhm.
you're going to lose. So I don't know. That to me was very interesting in 2025.
I agree with you. My not so smart answer is the same thing. You know what I mean? I know sometimes people want more insight, but that's why I asked the question the way you did, because I think it's a human response to what is happening
Hmm.
for us, not trying to speak through the veil of what the industry is. What artificial intelligence can bring to us as humanity on the whole, it's funny to be at the precipice of things we used to joke about in the Terminator and Skynet and whatnot, right? It's like here you are. It's like, and the way people are swarming to it and trying to use it and incorporate it in everything they do without any guardrails. I mean, you hear this term, the guardrails,
Hmm.
right? It's all about innovation. Humanity is about exploration and innovation. You know what I mean? We explored the seas, we explored lands, like we're explorers. We go to space, and you trying to explore how this technology can benefit us is worthwhile. But there's so much stuff that it just scares me too.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? How we're just so willingly giving over so much so early, you know, and looking at the stuff that's getting created that gets generated back through some of these AI agents and still needing to verify that stuff. We've always been in the business of verification of the news and the information we get, right? And so fully trusting something that's been kind of unfettered and uncontrolled, you know, it scares you. You know, I mean, I think you've heard some of the reports. There have been some official kind of reports done in some jurisdictions around Canada where, in the end, it's like the AI was used in parts of it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? After it's been published, and we're like, oh my God, that never happened. You know what I mean? That wasn't there. You
Hallucinations
know,
was the one buzzword for earlier this year when it came to
hmm
AI and what it was
yeah.
doing, quote unquote. So,
And it's a big deal. We see the mobilization in the industry to try to see how does it help. I mean, I'm someone that's chaired a panel on
hmm.
AI 2 building shows ago, and I look at the discussions we had at the building show last year about AI, and here we went a year later to this year at the building show. It is just it's leaps and bounds the conversation and what's been developed in 1 year around that
100%.
and how it's starting to infiltrate our life. AI slop is a term. You know what I mean? And it's a justified term. Like, I mean, you just got to go through an Instagram feed of anyone's, and it's just
Hmm.
amazing what you see. You know what I mean? And we see what the power of the internet is when it's misused and abused, and AI is perfect for it as well. You know, and so seeing the industry try to build for the data centers, trying to build the capacity to enter that world, it's been interesting. You know, I would say that was kind of one of the things that's driving definitely for our readers and listeners to pay attention to in 2026. You're going to see a lot more focused specialty coverage coming from the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce and this podcast and some other partners we're thinking of being with on the subject that we're going to cover AI in construction in a let's try to build the definitive, you know what I mean, bedrock of research and stories to refer back to. You know what I mean? But it's changing all the time. So we know that would be fluid too. Whatever we create, I'm sure whatever we start writing about in the first half of next year on AI, there's going to be differences by the end of the year too.
100%.
Right.
I think you can guarantee that.
And with that, the only other thing that struck me in the industry was it's always about the politics of the industry. You know, I mean, we see how certain groups and associations all line up depending on who the leader is, depending on where their side of the political line. You don't have to jump in on this, and this is fine. This could be on me. You know what I mean? But it's just like I see how they line up depending on who the leader is. So when I looked at that recent the federal election, they got Prime Minister Carney in place. It's interesting to see how the players line up. You know what I mean? Because there were a lot of voices that were not anything you would ever think supporting anybody in the red that was a liberal, right? But that was that more the Justin Trudeau factor than it is the liberal factor.
And
And to
that's the
see
other
people
variable
move,
there. Yeah.
yeah,
Who's
exactly.
at the
To see the
helm?
who's at the helm, to see the deck chairs move around and everybody line up, because everybody needs to get fed, and I get it, right? And we've seen it when you're around long enough, people get behind every stripe because work needs to happen.
Yeah.
right? So I think that's why my rant is sometimes so much time is wasted on the toxicity of it all, of attacking who's in power. It's like the work needs to get done. You need to get the funding. Jobs need to be filled, right? Why waste so much time politicking about it? Let's just get to it, you know? And when you see the advent of what's going on with AI and the fear and rapidity, like how fast that's moving, and yet we still move so slow in so many different ways in construction, find it frustrating sometimes. But that's my 2025 rant. You know what I mean? Because other than that, or we could just rant all, well, I could rant all day on a whole other subject and a whole other leader, but the TCR is about the news, not Vince Versace's opinions.
Oh, I'll leave it at that, eh, Vince?
We'll leave it at that. Exactly. So, share and like our podcast. Wherever podcatcher you catch it with, put it out there.
But stay tuned for our
But
2026 coverage. In all seriousness, we
yeah,
will be delving into the world of AI, and I know, much to maybe Vince's chagrin, there will still be more politicking and potential
mm,
toxicity in 2026. So
I just want everybody to get
I know,
along.
since
That's
it's
all I
such a
want.
peacemaker, anyways.
I'm just such a
Yeah,
peacemaker, if you know me.
sure.
No,
Um,
yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off with your remarks there,
No,
though.
no,
Go ahead.
that's fair.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I think it's important for us to highlight that we will keep our finger on the pulse when it comes to all the news happenings for 2026, just as we've done in 2025. And I am eager to see where the headlines take us because
Mm.
2025 was a roller coaster. Just to go back to the mind buster there. See what I did? And
I saw what you
yeah, I know.
did.
And I think 2026 might even be more exciting.
Yeah, and I'll leave it at my last thought is that is just to thank our longtime listeners and readers, people that have stayed loyal to us throughout the years. 2025 was a difficult year for this team. We went through some changes, you know what I mean, that we had to adjust how we cover the news, how we generate the news. This podcast went on hiatus for a year until we brought it back just recently as we started to refine our work processes to understand how we can still deliver all this quality information that we generate to the industry and still not drive ourselves into the ground, right? And the credit is to our readers, and I want to thank them. Those that stayed patient with us, the stakeholders and partners that we have in the industry as well, who were, and I use the word patient because they were, and understanding of everything that we went through, the changes with our teams, and we're still the definitive voice of construction in this country, and going to continue to be, and so can keep contributing the excellent reporting and coverage that we create, right? Because it's obvious there's a space and a need for it. The industry tells us that. The numbers show us that. So we're going to keep doing that. So stay tuned, as Lindsay said. And with that, happy holidays, Lindsay Cole,
Thank you so
and
much.
yep, and everyone out there. I hope you're all on the nice list.
If you're
I don't
not,
know
have
where I
fun
might
being
be.
naughty.
Exactly. There we go. With that, take care, folks. Thank you.